May 6th, 1915, into the world came a child who was going to be legendary. At that time, radio as an entertainment vehicle was a whisper. Movies, big draw of the day, hadn't learned to talk. But by the time George Orson Welles had reached his end after a 50-year career, he established himself as an innovative and tempestuous filmmaker and became a source of influence to generations of artists. Welles would grow to employ technical innovation in service of art as few have seen before or since, and traces of his editing technique found even today in reality shows and YouTube videos. It is on that note that I quote Mr. Welles: "The essential is to excite the spectators. If that means playing Hamlet on a flying trapeze or in an aquarium, you do it." Thanks to producer Eric Furman. Rock on, true believers. We leave you with this tribute to Orson Welles.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars.
Orson Welles called The War of the Worlds a Halloween prank, a clever adaptation of the well-known story by H.G. Wells in which an ordinary program of dance music would be interrupted by news bulletins to tell the scary story of an invasion from Mars. Despite all the usual announcements and the patently impossible sequence of events, the technique proved so convincing that listeners across the country panicked.
Of course, we are deeply shocked and deeply regretful about the results of last night's broadcast. It came rather as a great surprise to us that a story, the fine H.G. Wells classic fantasy, the original for so many succeeding comic strips and adventure stories and novels about a mythical invasion by monsters from the planet Mars, should have had so profound an effect upon radio listeners.
In fact, we weren't as innocent as we meant to be. When we did the Martian broadcast, we were fed up with the way in which everything that came over this new magic box, the radio, was being swallowed. People, you know, do suspect what they read in the newspapers and what people tell them, but when the radio came, and I suppose now television, anything that came through that new machine was believed.
It began with a 250-page draft script called American, written by the veteran screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz, much revised and shortened, and some say rewritten by Welles himself. It became Citizen Kane.
The trouble is you don't realize you're talking to two people. As Charles Foster Kane, who owns 82,364 shares of public transit preferred, you see, I do have a general idea of my holdings. I sympathize with you. Charles Foster Kane is a scoundrel. His paper should be run out of town. A committee should be formed to boycott him. You may, if you can form such a committee, put me down for a contribution of $1,000.
My time's...
On the other hand, I am the publisher of the Inquirer. As such, it's my duty, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's also my pleasure to see to it that decent, hard-working people in this community aren't robbed blind by a pack of money-mad pirates just because they haven't anybody to look after their interests.
I used to go by ambulance from one radio station to another because I discovered there was no law in New York that you had to be sick to travel in an ambulance. So I hired the ambulance, and I would go from CBS to NBC. They'd hold an elevator for me. I'd go up to the 5th floor, go into the studio, whichever I was booked for. I'd say, "What's the character?" They'd say, 80-year-old Chinaman. And I'd go on and do the 80-year-old Chinaman and then rush off somewhere else.
You celebrated a big birthday, didn't you?
I didn't celebrate it, I just had it. At my age, nobody celebrates a birthday.
You don't celebrate a special event like that?
Well, way in my hot youth, yes. I used to pretend it was my birthday when I took a girl out to dinner. And then I'd have the waiter bring a cake in and sing happy birthday, and I'd use that as an excuse to extend the evening. And one night, a friend of mine, Ty Power, God rest him, whose birthday happened to be the same day as mine, May 6th, came in February and saw a waiter singing happy birthday to me while I sat next to a pretty girl, and I got the dirtiest look I've ever had in my life.